Hereditary. Scene 25. 4 minutes and 30 seconds counting 3 medium shots, 2 wides, and 1 handheld that work together in perfect balance.
Just fucking say it! Don't you swear at me, you little shit! Don't you ever raise your voice at me! I am your mother!
So, wait a minute. Why are we talking about this in a video about Coralie Fargeat's The Substance? Well, that's because to me, it's a perfect example of how filmmakers can do so much with so little, if they're willing to trust the audience. By being deliberate in lighting, pacing, blocking, dialogue, and tone, even a simple sentence like this one,
she didn't want to go to the party. So why was she there?
Can reveal so much to the audience.
Fine.
As a director, when you're consistent in your techniques, like the symbolism behind Annie's miniatures vis-a-vis control and manipulation, or the recurring headless imagery, you get really fucking good storytelling. The point is, filmmakers have a huge arsenal at their disposal, but choosing the right technique and executing it well matters more than the technique itself, which brings us back to The Substance. Most of the screenplay's 150 pages look something like this, or this, or this. In fact, scribbled within those 150 pages, there's only about 20 total of dialogue. What this means is that The Substance relies heavily on the experience it creates, rather than the dialogue it delivers to get its point across.
Is everything okay?
I covered off the new French Extremity movement in my video on Titan, so I won't go into it in too much detail. You can check that out here if you're interested. But in short, Fargeat belongs to a group of directors that land their ideas by pushing the boundaries of what's deemed acceptable, especially regarding sexuality, violence, and other overly taboo subjects. You get the picture. The concept goes something like this. If the audience associates feelings of shock or revulsion to deeper ideas, then those ideas are more likely to stick, even if it means bashing someone to a pulp with a fire extinguisher. If you've seen The Substance, which hopefully you have, otherwise this video isn't going to make a lot of sense, you'll know that one of the key feelings Fargeat plays with is disgust. Now, there's 3 basic pillars to disgusting an audience. There's the visual provocation, or what we see, the audio priming, or what we hear, and finally, the emotional manipulation, what we feel. But before we get into all that and peel back the movie's flesh, let's quickly go over the film's plot. Oh, and of course, spoilers ahead. Okay, so that's Elizabeth Sparkle, a once huge TV star who's at the tail end of aging out of Hollywood. That's Harvey, her aptly named slimy producer. There he is firing her, there he is eating shrimp. Don't worry, we'll come back to that later, as disgusting as it is. Anyway, after a car crash, Elizabeth discovers a mysterious serum called The Substance, which promises to split her into 2 selves, the old Elizabeth and a new version, the younger, bouncier Sue.
Hello.
The catch, each can only exist for a week at a time, with no exceptions. Obviously, rules are broken and, well, Monstro Elisue. But before we get to that point and why it somehow feels so weirdly good, let's start with the first building block we mentioned, the visual provocation. The world Elizabeth lives in is so methodically assembled, so clinically perfect, that it doesn't feel real. From impossibly long hallways to sterile bathrooms, it doesn't just feel empty, but otherworldly. By blending color palettes, architecture, fashion, and technology from different eras, the place doesn't quite fit into our reality, and suitably so, neither does Elizabeth. She's a character trying to find warmth in a cold place, desperately clinging to a reality she's aging out of. To enhance that feeling of offness, Fargeat's DP, Benjamin Krakoun, made several great decisions in the hardware he chose to shoot on.
I want the point of view, I want the form
to be completely tied in with what the director wants to say.
For example, for most of the film's wide shots, he picked vintage Canon K35 lenses because for a spherical lens, the K35 is great at keeping its close-up focus without losing those softer bokehs, those flares, and those edge distortions that you wouldn't get with more modern hardware. And for this movie, that's more than great. It's perfect. It's precisely what makes shots like these work so well. Harvey's phone call here serves its purpose as exposition.
We need her hot. We need her now.
But it's the shot itself that causes an emotional reaction. And that heavy use of stylized wide shots with distorted up-close subjects and otherworldly backgrounds is precisely how, on a subconscious level, discomfort begins to seep into the audience, a feeling that returns with each rippling pore and every scrutinous gaze. The same can be said about the film's heavy use of mirrors, of split frames, and reflective surfaces, which visually echo that internal divide Elizabeth is going through. It's uncanny, and it lands the alienation that Elizabeth feels throughout the movie. As a character who, outside of work, exists in complete isolation, her self-worth isn't defined by any meaningful connection, but by her ability to be loved by a crowd.
Oh, hey, it's your birthday. Happy birthday.
And in a way, the audience's escalating feelings of rejection and disgust play into that theme perfectly. But what about close-ups? As the vehicle of Elizabeth's emotional state, they're often stylized through the removal of any unnecessary visual distractions to instead solely rely on their audio and their subject. The audio identity of a close-up in the substance exists more as a surrealistic expression of a shot than anything else. It isn't just defined by something simple like a change in volume, but an entire overhaul. From the subtle sound of organic bubbling overlaid here,
That's just the way it is.
to the pressure and the distortion that dominates a panic attack. These cues intensify the emotional response to their experience, making the mundaneness of a reflection feel like a crushing wave, or conversely, the contemplation of a snow globe, divine. In any case, shots like these are at best disorienting and at worst nauseating, and it's specifically because the film is so scarce in dialogue that its sensory experience works so well. Close-ups in the substance are not shots that can be watched so much as they demand to be felt. Like the smell of burning hair or the sting of an infected cyst, it's complete sensory overload, crafted in a way that causes both a physical and an emotional reaction directly aligned with Elizabeth's. And now that you know how the movie builds each of these things, it's time to discuss how it uses them to manipulate us. In the substance, manipulation lives in the editing room. Let me ask you this. What's the common thing between these three shots? What about these? Okay, it's a bit of a trick question. If you answered the framing and the composition of the shots themselves, you'd be right. This is a technique called a recurring camera shot, or shot mirroring, and it's used above all to link certain scenes together. So the big question is, why? For example, in Interstellar, Christopher Nolan uses this shot to echo one that happened 20 minutes prior, helping the audience understand the dilemma Cooper faces as a father and a man of duty. The substance uses mirror shots to multiple effects. For example, here, where the mirroring of these four shots achieves a level of thematic pacing that wouldn't otherwise be possible. Each time the shot is revisited, with increasingly chaotic camera movement, the audience reacts, better understanding Elizabeth's downward spiral by experiencing it through the camera work. Here, the shot mirroring is more contemplative, the repetition of which hammers the feeling of isolation Elizabeth feels despite her best efforts for the contrary. Then, of course, there's the dozens of literal mirror shots that serve as meditative pauses before Elizabeth takes things further, something the audience, of course, notices and reacts anxiously to. I know they made me uncomfortable, to say the least. And finally, there's my favorite progression in the movie, the top-down shots that develop like an unstoppable force and amplify the impact of the film's climax from the first to the final shot of the Hollywood star. With each top-down shot escalating in its extremity, an emotional echo forms within the audience, amplifying the weight of the next until splat. But Fargeat doesn't stop at building patterns. She also uses them to subvert our experience throughout the entire movie. For example, when Sue is on screen, we often see her as this glossy, hypersexualized character reminiscent of old school beauty advertisements and music videos. These shots feel like the classic male gaze framing, offering Sue up as this perfect woman to be consumed. But instead of sustaining that idea of perfection, the film pushes it to a grotesque level and therefore corrupts it. Close-ups linger too long on pores and contortions. Risque shots last too long as well, making them go from playful to distasteful. It all works to make Sue's beauty become uncomfortable, something that helps the audience break that spell of eroticization and realize their own complicity as a consumer.
The monster!
It challenges the norm of how we look at women, especially through the lens of entertainment, by pushing it to its extreme. The emotional manipulation, the pacing, the craft, it isn't a coincidence, it's by design, and it all works towards one thing. You know, the first time I watched this movie, I remember thinking, okay, I'm pretty sure I get it. This isn't a movie that pulls its punches, so its themes aren't exactly hard to notice. However, I also remember wondering how exactly is Fargeat going to bring it all together. You see, during the first hour and 55 minutes or so of the movie, Elizabeth clings with increasing difficulty to the world around her.
I'd like to order.
She loses fingers, hair, limbs, even her sanity in the process, but there's always a counterbalance in Sue and her saturated, colorful, and perfect existence. But that tension only gets us so far, and when it reaches its breaking point, Fargeat basically has two options to get where she's going. Either A, one character destroys the other, which seems like a poor choice because it would go against the entire film's repeated message of self-acceptance, or B, the two merge, transforming into something entirely new, and in the process, unify Elizabeth's growing internal divide. In opting for the latter, the near 2-hour section at the head of the film is redefined as a build-up for its 20-minute finale. Fargeat has shown us why she is angry, but now she'll scream. It's only by pushing the extremity of the imagery, the score, and the audience's revulsion that the film is able to properly hammer in its message. How, in the end, it took Elizabeth transforming into a monstrosity, physically tearing herself apart in the process to accept who she is. The film's intense visual style isn't just there for shock value, it's thematic, forcing the audience to confront the disturbing consequences of chasing unattainable ideals. In doing so, it highlights how dehumanizing that chase can be, how eager we are for outside acceptance, and how easily we can become disgusted with who we are.
Control!
It criticizes what's come to be normal and challenges us to change, to expect better and to do better by exposing how complicit we are in our silence.
What's happening? Where is everybody?
And hey, who knows? Maybe that in challenging us to reflect on our cultural fixations and how we determine our self-worth.
If you are not satisfied, you can put an end to the experience and go back to being just you on your own. Would you like to stop?
Fargeat achieves something different, something that has the potential to change lives. And I think that, through all the rotten flesh and broken skin, that deserves to be celebrated. After all, being human also means embracing your flaws, your ugly, your imperfections, because no matter how much you try to change, ignore, or do away with certain aspects of yourself, you are one.